around every border here, there are sort of two realities. At first glance, the appearance of calm, but behind that, a constant buzz of military prep and strategic planning for the next conflict. The Israel-Lebanon border is no different, and it involves the Iran-backed Hezbollah on just the other side of the divide. 11 years after the last war at that spot, our senior defense correspondent Shai Ben-ari went back to see how Israel sees it now.
It's been 11 years. The time that has passed since Israel's last major conflict with Hezbollah, a 34-day struggle known as the Second Lebanon War, has been fairly quiet on the country's northern border. But recent months have seen an increase in Hezbollah activity here, and much of it has to do with these ominous black towers that now peer into Israeli territory. The war in 2006 began with a cross-border raid by Hezbollah militants, who killed 2 Israeli soldiers and snatched their bodies from a damaged IDF vehicle. Lieutenant Yonatan Shechner serves on the Lebanese border today. Though he was not in the army 11 years ago, he says that incident is still on everyone's minds here.
Of course, not only on the anniversary, it's in your head all the year long. During every mission or during preparations for the daily routine, we take that possibility into consideration, the possibility of an abduction. We drill and do what is needed to minimize risks.
Shechner says that this tower is part of a Hezbollah program to gradually return to positions along the border with Israel.
Over the past 6 months, this sector has been much more active than before that period. We see both the Lebanese army as well as Hezbollah approaching the fence much more often. Their activities vary. Some are openly visible, some are hidden. Another interesting trend is that we see a whole lot of cooperation between Hezbollah and the Lebanese army. Very tight cooperation. Mutual positions, mutual patrols, mutual orders. This used to be extraordinary, and 6 months to a year ago, it didn't exist here.
Hezbollah activity here focuses on observation and collecting intelligence. Their presence violates a UN Security Council resolution from the end of the 2006 conflict, which decreed the group could not have a military presence in the border region. But as we drove along the fence, we spotted a UN patrol only several feet away from the guard tower.
The UN is here, they're present, we know them. They have a lot of visible activity here. And it has to be said, just as we know that Hezbollah is here, it's certain the UN knows as well. Beyond that, it's difficult for me to say what they're doing to prevent this.
The UN has generally refrained from admitting that Hezbollah military activity exists on the border. Israel is certainly not happy about the presence of Hezbollah so close to its border and its forces here, but unless the UN decides to act against the Shiite militant group, the situation is likely to remain as it is. Shai Ben-ari, I-24 News, the Israel-Lebanon border.
And Shai Ben-ari here with us now. Great to have you. I want to hear more about that report in a wider context, because what we keep hearing, there's a sort of school of thought that says Hezbollah has been so heavily invested in the Syrian war. They've sent thousands of fighters there. They couldn't possibly be interested or ready for a conflict with Israel. Is that wrong?
It's an interesting point, and it's a complicated one. Hezbollah's experience in Syria has had both positive and negative effects for the group. Let's begin with the positive. They have around 1,400 militants killed there. That's the estimate. That's a lot for a group that is not yet a standard army, but perhaps approaching that. There are cases of infighting which have led to the murder of a senior commander there, for example. On the other hand, they're accumulating a lot of battlefield experience in perhaps the most lethal battlefield there is today. On a tactical level, preparations are being made for these new capabilities that Hezbollah have shown to possess. They are operating over stretches of territory that are larger than the state of Israel, so that is a real concern here. There's also a realization amongst IDF officers and soldiers that they are now facing a different sort of fighting group. The last war with Hezbollah began with a sort of pinpoint cross-border raid there, but most of Hezbollah's efforts were focused on rocket fire, of course, but mainly defensive efforts to build up command bunkers that were underground, to build up fighting positions that made it very hard for an eventual ground incursion by the IDF. We saw a lot of intense fighting there with heavy casualties on both sides, and most of the efforts were focused in that direction. Nowadays, Hezbollah has turned into a more offensive organization. It knows how to move forward, conquered territory, carry out attacks, and that's something that is being studied very heavily by the IDF. They're studying tactics and maneuvers by Hezbollah, and the threat of Hezbollah actually being able to maybe even conquer a stretch of Israeli territory is a real one. Not necessarily for a long period of time and not necessarily a large stretch of territory, but even a temporary conquering of a small area could be a major public relations coup for Hezbollah.